Well, welcome everybody. My name is John Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and along with our colleagues at the Baltimore Architecture Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us on this Friday afternoon. Want to say thank you also to everybody who made a voluntary contribution. It is an enormous help, so thank you sincerely. Before I introduce today's speaker, just want to say if you're free next Friday, we're going to be having a talk. Our talk is going to be on the Church of the Redeemer. If you are at all a sort of modern architecture fan, or if you're curious about it, or if you're like me, you're curious and maybe a little skeptical, join us and learn a little bit about that. And then the week after that, Rebecca Hoffberger, the director and founder of the American Visionary Arts Museum, is going to join us to talk about AVAM, how it came to be, and all of its absolutely over-the-top wonderfulness. So I hope you can join us for that also. All right, today our speaker is a gentleman named Rein Terpstra, who is an educator, an artist, a photographer from the Netherlands. He is at the Minerva Art Academy and has had works shown all over the world, in the United States, at MoMA, at the Getty, at the Yale Art Museum. And I think that we are in for a real treat. He, in a really unbelievable way, has been able to combine kind of a lifetime appreciation for the Kennedys, and then an artist's eye, a photographer's eye, of almost flipping the camera around on the RFK funeral train and giving us a look back into ourselves as we memorialized the passing of that. Want to quickly just say that the photograph that was in our announcement was by Herbert, easy for me to say, Herbert Harwood. So want to say thank you and give credit where credit is due there. And then finally want to make a pitch that this is an ongoing project, a labor of love and of a lot of research. And Rein is still looking for photographs of the funeral train, especially from people in Baltimore. So if you are out there and you have such a photograph, I know he'd love to hear from you and we can help you get in touch. If you've got a shoebox of photographs in your closet from your Aunt Melba, maybe take a rustle through and see if there's one in there. So with that, I'm going to say, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A or the chat box, and we're going to get to them at the end of the presentation. So with that, Rein, I'm going to say thank you for joining us from Amsterdam, and we are all yours.
Well, thank you very much for your wonderful introduction, John. Thank you, and Nathan as well. And well, I'm glad to be here and to present this project. Well, you know better than I do, all of you, that the Robert F. Kennedy funeral train rode through Baltimore from New York City to Washington D.C. And carrying the body of the assassinated Senator Robert F. Kennedy. I know that it was a very turbulent time. On more than 52 years ago. And I would love to tell a bit about this train project and also about my search, how I came to this. I think it started with my father, who was a huge Kennedy admirer, and he told me many stories about the Kennedys. And I think somehow that left an imprint on me ever since. And later I became an artist, and I became interested in photography, especially in relation with memory and collective memory. And that is actually an important way of getting into this project. And on my birthday, that happened to be on the 4th of July, friends gave me a book of the Robert F. Kennedy by Paul Fusco, and I will show you that later. For now, I would like to show you a very short home movie. It's only 4 minutes. Please bear with this movie because it's super interesting. a short introduction to this movie. This is made in Elkton, 2.5 hours before the train went through Baltimore, and it is made by Larry Beers. Larry Beers, I met him through, thanks to a friend of mine, Mike Dixon, I think he's also in the audience here, and he introduced me to Larry Beers, who was homeless at that time. And Larry told me many times that he had a film of Robert F. Kennedy, of the passing of the train through Elkton, Maryland, with that he had it on this Super 8 film. After a lot of efforts, I was able to find this film, and he gave it to me. And I, together with Mike, we interviewed him. And what you will hear and see now is the footage that Larry Beers took, and this wonderful story that he shared with us.
My family lived about 1 block from the railroad. So we were very...
Rein, I think you need to share your screen.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Hold on. I forgot the screen sharing. Hold on. Yeah, no worries.
This is called an international transfer of technology here.
Yeah. Okay. Do you see the image?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's that must be the gunpowder bridge. Okay, now I go to the film of Larry Beers.
My family lived about 1 block from the railroad station. So we were very used to the trains, and my dad liked to ride the trains. And I'm the youngest of 4 children. And in my family, I was the photographer. At the age of 8, Mom and Dad gave me a little brownie Kodak. And as things progressed, I went into movies. So on that day, I had an 8mm movie camera, and it was historically significant to us. And then it was clearly announced that there would be a train coming from New York City to Washington, D.C. And impromptu, totally on the spur of the moment, people began showing up along the sidings of the rail line, the main rail line, which at that time I thought was the Pennsylvania Road. I went over about the time that I thought the train was going to come through. It wasn't announced on television for people to pay their homage, but it was a natural thing to do along the main line, 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And there was other local citizens. I remember the Boy Scouts had arrived in their uniforms with the American flag and the Maryland flag and then the Boy Scout flag. And they were preparing to honor Robert Kennedy as the train came through. That was right at the station of Elkton, the Elkton train station. Now, people had brought their children. This was history. People were in conversation very, very solemnly. And my camera zoomed in as the train was pulling away. I tried to capture Jackie Kennedy, and she is appearing there. And she is acknowledged by the crowd. The crowd is saying, "Oh, it's Jackie Kennedy." I felt that I was witnessing a part of history. And again, my father and my mother did not come to the train station. I felt I was representing my father, who loved the Kennedys. 1968 to me, it means a very turbulent year in my life, because we did have Martin Luther King assassinated in March, the end of March of 1968, and the urban areas, the cities burned in some form of retaliation. I don't agree with what happened, but we had a lot of cities burned, and it was terrible to watch on the television because that was the reaction of a peaceful man, by the way. Martin Luther King was admired by all, everyone. So when that occurred, his assassination hurt everyone, no matter what religion or race. But that was a very turbulent time. I wasn't far away from being drafted for that war that was going on in Vietnam. For years it had gone on. Some of the names on that wall that they built in Washington, D.C. were from Elkton and had gone off and didn't come back alive. And I was concerned myself. And Robert Kennedy was picking up the torch, as I feel, of his brother John. And I feel there's no doubt he overwhelmingly would have been elected in 1968. So with his assassination, I thought as a 16-year-old, my town, my country is falling apart. I felt the world was falling apart.
Well, this was a short film of Larry Beers, and it's one of the most special home movies I've ever seen of passing of the funeral train. Well, as I told before, this book I got a present on my birthday on the 4th of July, and it became one of my most beloved, famous road movies, so to say. And I will tell a bit about it. Excuse me for my English, it's not perfect, I know. Please don't correct me, do it afterwards. I will tell a bit about this book and why this book led me to my research. There were a lot of pictures in the book, of course, and I show a lot of them made in Baltimore. And as you could see, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, I spotted some people with a camera. Here is one with a camera. Here's a person with a camera. Here's a person, and here a lady. And one of the things that struck me in the photos of Paul Fusco was all these people were staring. They were looking at something which was not visible in the photographs themselves, which was the train. And I wondered, how are these people, what are these people looking at? And what do they see? And the only way to find out was to look through their cameras were. And that's where my project started. It started with a huge question: would it be possible to retrieve, to find images, to collect images these people shot that day, and to stitch them together, and maybe to create a kind of collective memory that does not form part of the official history, which is the people's view. And that's where my project started. It was field work. I worked a lot on Facebook, as some of you may know already. Some took me for a Dutch spammer. I posted so many times on so many Facebook groups. I think I remember about 500 Facebook groups, and sometimes they kicked me out, but I came back. But I also traveled a lot in the United States. I followed the route. I spent a lot of time in Baltimore. I gave some classes on the MICA, the Art Institute of Maryland. And I traveled from New York to Washington, D.C. over and over again, hanging around train stations, talking with as many people as I could. And bit by bit, I was able to collect stories. People shared stories with me, their images, films. And what I'm going to show you now are a few images that Paul Fusco took from aboard the train in Baltimore. And keep in mind, this train, it was, there were about 1 million people saying goodbye to Robert F. Kennedy. They were going out, they heard it on the radio, and they went out to bid the last farewell. And it were about 1 million people, so it was a spontaneous act. This is the book of Paul Fusco. I always took it with me on my journeys to the United States, and I showed them to many people. Some of you may recognize the place better than I do. I'm very curious about your take on these photographs, where they were taken, and And this one, the other day I took a closer look and I was wondering what these letters here, what these white letters would mean. And I thought, would it maybe lithographers? And then I came across this image and I found out, wow, this is a place that existed for many times already. And I realized that one of the photographers who contributed to the book I made about the Robert F. Kennedy funeral train, his name is Herbert Harwood Jr. And he took this photograph, and here is the same building again. So Paul Fusco was on the other side of the train, photographing the previous image, this one. And more or less at the same time, I suppose, Herbert Harwood photographed from this side. There were three trains, a pilot train, and then the real Kennedy train, and the very last car, the coffin of Robert F. Kennedy was carried, and here members of the family. And Herbert Harwood, I think he would have stand here and photographed it from this point of view. I was like a detective. I was figuring out where people were standing, and some of the images I still need your help. Maybe you can tell me, but this one I figured out. This is a contribution of Stephanie Sansone. I met her. She lives not far from Baltimore, and she gave me this collage, this wonderful image. One of the photographs, it's an Aramco Steel Company. I'm not sure where this place is, but I have a guess. And I also reconstructed the train journey through Baltimore. And the red dots you see, that were the places where people commented where they were standing. So thanks to their comments on Facebook, I was able to say, so this was the train route. And bit by bit, I was able to reconstruct it because that was quite difficult. Okay, I show you some images people shared with me. This is in Elkton as well, Melinda Watson. So also thanks to Mike Dixon, the historian from Elkton, who helped me a lot. And he put me in contact with Melinda Watson, and she gave me these images. This was not far from, this is Newport or Newark in Delaware. For me, this is a very compelling picture. How close can you get saying goodbye? And this is also a wonderful image, very close. Here you see the coffin. And here you see the two sons of Robert F. Kennedy. And now this is the presentation in the SF MoMA in San Francisco, where I presented my work. And just like I showed you in Baltimore, the train route, I reconstructed the whole journey from New York City to Washington, D.C. and putting all the photos, all these snapshots and home movie stills on the place where they more or less were shot. So sometimes on the southeast side or on the northwest side. And here you see the collage that I showed of this is Baltimore. This Middlesex and Arbutus. And this is films, still from a film I made. It's also in Delaware. It's a combination of film, stills, and shots, and also sound. This is a presentation in the Nederlands Fotomuseum, the Dutch Fotomuseum in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And people shared also their stories with me, and a few of them quite a lot I collected, and I made them part of the exhibition because I thought they were so impressive, so compelling. And this is the book I made. I go through it quickly. This is, I made this book in 2018, and it's a combination of photographs, film stills, as you can see, of the train. And also I got permission from the daughter of Paul Fusco to present 10 photographs made by Paul Fusco, which were stored at the Library of Congress. I went 2 times to the Library of Congress, and I was able to document these images. There are some film stills and a foreword. And in this book, I made the chronological order from New York to Washington, D.C. And this is the very last image, just before the train arrived in Washington, D.C. And this is the index. I didn't put names on it. You could see in the index, you can see all the names and the places and also the time. And the image, all the pictures, they have a timeline. As you can see here. So through the timeline, you see where the train was. Normally the train journey takes about 4 hours, and that took about 4 hours at the time. But this day, as the funeral train had some delays, there was an accident happened, some problems in Philadelphia, and it needed to have a kind of slow pace. So it took 8 hours from Washington, D.C., from New York City to Washington, D.C. So this is the very last image, and I love this image. The other day, the owner of this image offered me to give me his image, and it's on its way to the Netherlands. I hope it will arrive tomorrow. It's a very, very special one. I love it, and also because it's the very last picture. The train is not on the image, but it's just the very last one. Okay, these are a few images of Paul Fusco took from aboard the train, which also form part of the book. This is in New Jersey. This is somewhere in Maryland. I think it is between Baltimore and Washington, when I see it the moment of the day. This as well. And here we have the $1 million question. I take this opportunity to share this image with you. It is one of the most beautiful images Paul Fusco took from aboard the train. It is an iconic image. And for years, I'm searching, who is this family? Where were they standing? I know they were somewhere at the south of Baltimore, Odenton, Harmons, Severn, somewhere around that place. And I would love to find them. And I did everything I could, but until now, no luck. So, but I keep on searching. And this is the very last image of this presentation. I'm not sure how much time it will take to read it. But... Okay, I will stop screen sharing now and go to Jones and to the audience.
All right.
Yes, okay. Okay.
All right, thank you, Rein. That I mean, it is. I got a sneak preview earlier in the week, and it's still, the images are so powerful. We do have a few questions. First of all,
Yes,
we have
please.
a number of people in the chat room have offered up maybe some insights into where some of the photographs took place. So we'll I might get you in touch with them. It sounds like we've got a few experts out there. There is a question about how fast the train went, and I know you talked a little bit about that. But do you want to talk a little bit? I mean, if you were standing on the side of the tracks, was it something that crept by and yet you were there with the train for a couple minutes, or did it kind of whiz by and you sort of,
yeah.
You know, or...
Wow, I did some research, but that's a long time already. I think it was 50 miles per hour, but the speed was different. In the beginning, I rode very slowly to keep up the funeral train pace, you know, and to give people time. There was an accident in Elizabeth. A few people on the tracks were killed by an opposite train. And then I know it speeded up. If Aberdeen, there the train went very fast. But I think, if I remember well, 50 miles per hour, more or less. So it is 8 hours. So you can, where's my calculator?
We have a suggestion to go back to that family image so that people can do a screen capture and share it on their own social networks and see if we might get some insight into that. So let's see. I guess, do you want, why don't we, maybe we can try, do you want to share your screen one more time and we can see if this works? And if it doesn't, I'm going to apologize.
Which of the family? Yeah, okay.
One of the last ones with all the kids don't have shirts on. I think that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it would help, if Rein, if you want to email me the photo too, I can email it to everybody who signed up to attend this.
Okay. Yeah. I will do. Yeah. So this one.
I think that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah. And I was wondering, and I know that a few people said this is near Harmons because they could recognize the tracks. There's a kind of creek probably there. These people, it seems they were very local. The kids were swimming, but until now, no one recognized this family. And I reached out to a lot of people. Also from Harmons, so who knows?
We'll see if the history sleuths here can make some insight.
It would be so great to interview them and to see what they remember from that day standing there. Yeah.
All right, so let me. I'm going to ask one question. We try to end on time at 1:30. But if you've got a question, please do put it in the chat box. I actually have one question for you, Rein.
Yeah. John, there are a few people. There are some chats. Do you want to read them out loud, or what should we do?
Are there? Let's see. Can I do that? We've got
the Q&A. We have 6 in the Q&A. And 12 chats.
12 chats. Let me, you're stretching my technical abilities here, Rein. Let me see if I get the chat. We've got a lot of hellos from all over the world to you, I think, Rein. From Maryland to Italy to California. So you certainly have touched, I think if the train touched people from Washington to New York or New York to Washington, you've definitely touched folks as well.
Well, I must say the United States is the best country to do research in. People were really forthcoming and very helpful. And because it's also, I know it is also a traumatic part of American history. You know, with that year, Martin Luther King was assassinated, Robert F. Kennedy, there was student riots, you know, so I felt how vivid this year was for so many Americans.
So we do have a actual question that ends in a question mark that let me ask about, will the film be shown again somewhere? And we are recording this on Facebook so that it will, the entire session, including that 4-minute home movie clip will be available. And then there's a gentleman who has says that there was a bit of celebrity worship with RFK and his brother. And did you get a sense of that, Rein, from your looking at the people who were there?
Yeah.
Was like what was your takeaway? And I was actually going to ask, did you sense a difference in the people from New Jersey versus the people from Baltimore versus the people from Philadelphia? Did what did you notice anything?
Yeah, no, I didn't notice any difference. No, not at all. The amount of people, the footage, no. But I do, coming back to your question about the celebrities, I think that has played a huge role. And I think after the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, I think, that's my guess, someone in the White House, maybe Jackie, I don't know, thought, let's give him a posthumous burial, like a presidential. And I think there was a conscious nod to the Abraham Lincoln train that rode through the United States, 1865, if I remember well. And I think there was an intention to create a kind of epic image in the mind of the people, to create a collective memory. And that's the funeral train. But the thing what really haunted me was we haven't seen the train. We only see, by the book of Paul Fusco, we only see the train through the images, through the expressions, the facial expressions of the people looking at the train. So the whole train was not visible. And 6 years ago, when I was looking for images of the Robert F. Kennedy funeral train, it was hard to find them. Now, when I Google it, I see a lot of them. A lot of from this project where I'm working on, but somehow there's a kind of visibility now of the funeral train. And I think that was the initial intention of the makers, to give it a kind of presidential farewell.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to one last shot at a question for Rein, and what do we have another?
Yeah, there are a few
questions here. Holy cow! Maybe I didn't scroll down far enough.
Wow, in the Q&A there are 10 questions.
Yeah.
Will you moderate them, please?
Yeah, I'm a terrible moderator. Sorry. There's a question here. I was asking if the film I saw at the MoMA in San Francisco will be shown again. So it's the film that was in the MoMA, I guess, as not the one that I was talking about. Is that film going to be shown again?
Well, it isn't public, but I'm happy to share it with a password if that's fine. Yeah, and sure. Thank you for the interest. Yeah.
So if you're interested, maybe get in touch with me or Nathan Denny's our co-host here, and we'll get you connected.
Yeah.
There was a comment here about many of the photos showed racially integrated groups of onlookers, black and white. Did that strike you? How did you respond to that?
That is a kind of cross-section of American society on the photos of Paul Fusco. Mm-hmm. What was the question exactly?
It was really kind of a comment on the integration of the photo, like the racial integration of the photographs.
Yeah.
That sort of
there is a funny thing. I took this photographs of Paul Fusco as very documental. This is America. But later I found this is not the United States. What we are seeing, that's my point of view, what we're seeing in the photographs of Paul Fusco is just for one day, I think, where people were standing shoulder to shoulder, all looking at the same thing. That was the society that Robert F. Kennedy envisioned, I think. Mm. And very sadly, that only happened through his death, through the funeral train. That was where if he could have seen the image he had envisioned for society, this kind of unity. And after the train went through, people dispersed, the crowd dispersed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let me read one more and maybe turn it into a question as well. And then we'll let everybody go here. Laura writes, does anyone remember as the train went through Baltimore Penn Station, that they spontaneously broke out into the battle hymn of the Republic. So a spontaneous song. And maybe if you do remember that, you can share it. But did that come up in other places, Rein? Do you know?
Yes. There are a few people who sung. Somewhere, I'm in touch. I have to see where, because there are so many people. But I know that there were people who responded to my request and saying, yes, we were standing there and singing this battle hymn of the Republic. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. With that, I'm going to say thank you again for sharing your work with us, and again invite anybody out there who is interested in following up, or maybe even has a photograph or a story to share. We can help get you in touch, and you can contribute to this ongoing project. All right. With that, Nathan, I think we're ready to say have a good weekend, and we will see you next Friday, hopefully.